The wait is finally over. Texas Southern has made a decision on who their head football coach will be. It's not Andre Johnson. It's not Fred McNair. It's Cris Dishman. Oh, yeah. It's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that are meant to treat more than 50 infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com and use the code LOCKED ON to get $20 off your first purchase. Now, we wrap up today's episode with a look at Texas Southern women's basketball versus UAPB and my two biggest takeaway from that weekend matchup. But we kick it off with Texas Southern football, and we look at their new head football coach, the funniest part of this whole coaching search now that it's finished and over, but then also what's going to happen to the other people who have been connected to this job, either seriously or loosely. Now, the new head coach for Texas Southern is Cris Dishman, and that was decided upon on Friday morning prior to you hearing the Friday episode. But if you know my everydayers, you heard Thursday's episode. I told you that was recorded basically right after. It was just released well into Friday afternoon to give Thursday its own time to really breathe as far as an episode. So that was already decided on what Friday's programming was going to be. TSU's decision, that didn't impact that. But I knew we'd be back here on Monday looking at this hire. And I'll be honest, I knew that the Board of Regents was going to have a meeting on Friday. I wasn't sure if it was Friday morning or if it was Friday afternoon, Friday evening, whatever. But I knew it was going to happen. I didn't have too much of a hope that they would find a coach because I had too much of a hope last time, and I was tired of getting my hopes up. However, when Andre Johnson took himself out of the running on Thursday night, I began to have a feeling that resolution was on the horizon, and I thought that resolution was Fred McNair. But I wasn't right about that. Instead, it was Cris Dishman. Now, I have not seen this name connected to TSU. This was a surprise for me. What likely happened is they decided on a compromise, and this was hopefully this is a good compromise. I don't know. I mean, and we're going to go over his resume. I don't think that his resume has enough for you to really gauge or really guess. He has his expertise. He's a secondary coach, and we'll get in kind of more depth with his resume at the end. But this is a new beginning. This is one that, honestly, if there wasn't so much backstory around it, if there wasn't so much context around it, if it wasn't Fred McNair and Andre Johnson around it, then I think that this will be a fresh beginning. This will be one that is like, all right, we're going with a clean slate, and we're just going to move forward with Coach Dishman. And after a while, a week, that's exactly what this will be, right? But let's look at who he is. Let's first go through the two common denominators that you typically see when looking at new HBCU head coaches, and that's HBCU ties or geographical ties. So he doesn't have any HBCU ties. He doesn't. He is a Purdue football player, right? Grew up in Kentucky, so he doesn't have that homegrown Houston connection. However, and he also hasn't coached at any HBCUs. But what he does have in this specific situation is connection to the city of Houston. He's a former Houston Oiler. He was drafted by the Oilers and played 9 years for them before finishing up his last 3 years with different teams to culminate a 12-year career. But you're looking at, it was an 11-year career, something like that. So you're looking at Dishman, and he was a pretty good football player. I don't know if he fits the mold as this celebrity coach or whatever. I mean, the guy stopped playing in 2000. I was extremely young. So I don't think I'm really the right person to speak to that. I've heard some people say they remember him when he was playing. Obviously, those people are older than me. But for me, it doesn't fit this celebrity coaching mode that people are kind of trying to make more of a thing than it should be. And in one way, I'm kind of glad that TSU didn't go that direction, because I didn't have time to hear the celebrity coach this, celebrity coach that. I really didn't want to deal with the microscope that was going to come with it. But when you're looking at Dishman, he played in the league for over a decade. Like I said, 9 years with the Oilers, 3 years with other people. His ball production was pretty good, pretty strong in the league. He had 43 interceptions, excuse me. And he also played before pass deflections. So he registered 21 pass deflections in his second to last year playing. He'd already been in the league for a decade and had 21 pass deflections. There's a chance that your favorite defensive back has not had 21 pass deflections in a season. He had that after a decade in the league. But we're not looking for his playing qualifications to qualify him for this position. What has he done on the coaching side of things, right? So another reason you can't call him a celebrity coach is because the man's been working on his craft for nearly 20 years. Starting in 2005 as an intern, he's been working. He's been a positional coach on the D1 and the NFL level. He's been a defensive coordinator on the D3 level, on the high school level. He's been a defensive coordinator on the professional level in the XFL on multiple occasions. So you're looking at a guy who is well experienced. He doesn't have any head coaching experience, but he's very much experienced. 20 years. You're talking about 2005 to 2013. So what, 18 years really? This is a guy who, I think this is a solid hire. Time will tell if it's a good hire for real. This is a TBD hire because we haven't seen him do. We haven't seen him coach on a D2 level as a head coach. We've never seen him do anything as a head coach. So time will tell. But like I said at the very beginning, this feels like a fresh beginning. This feels like a no baggage from Alcorn, no baggage from status. This is just a coach coming into Houston, Texas, coming into Texas Southern, and attempting to turn around a program that has not been good in a long time. Speaking of which, this is just a PSA, and I feel like I say this later in the show. So one of these days, on one of these TSU topics, I'm going to have to say it in the very first 3 or 4 minutes. Y'all, please stop doing this whole trying to take a slug at TSU to take a slug at me. I would much rather you just take a slug at me because I don't care. People keep trying to mess with me. Oh, TSU football ain't. I've never seen a good TSU football team. So your insults mean nothing to me. I'm just trying to help you out. If you want to really get under my skin, the only reason it gets under my skin is like, why do y'all keep doing this? Why do y'all think I care? Like my being is not attached to TSU's football success, right? I'm wishing for it, but that slug's got to stop. It's ineffective. And if you want to be effective, just move to something else. I'm just telling you, move to something else. Talk about my Saints. I'm gonna be honest with you. Talk about my Saints, because that'll get me way more than this TSU will get me. I've never seen them be good. So you telling me that they're not good is like, okay, and what? It's like telling me my name has an N at the end. At the end of the day, that's irrelevant to me. However, let's move to some of the other coaches who didn't get this job, and then also look at the funniest part of this coaching search as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, if you were watching the NFL playoffs yesterday, I'm recording this after the first game, and yeah, here we go. Them Cowboys got whooped up. I ain't even gonna lie to you. It was bad. Now, if you would have put some money down on Green Bay, you probably got rewarded quite handsomely. Now, if you put down a $5 bet, doesn't matter if it's a money line bet, doesn't matter what it is, a $5 bet of any kind, and it was on Green Bay, not only did you win that bet, you also won $150 back in bonus bets. But don't worry, maybe you didn't expect this, because I didn't either, let alone the way it happened. No one, I don't think, expected that. Maybe put your money down on the Cowboys. And you're still new to FanDuel. This is only for people who are new. If you're new to FanDuel, put your money down on the Cowboys, or if you put your money down on the Packers, doesn't matter. Win or lose, you just got $150 back in bonus bets. It's okay. We have 2 more playoff games tonight, Bills versus Steelers, and then also Bucks versus Eagles. Go to FanDuel.com/locked-on, put down a $5 bet, and get $150 back in bonus bets, win or lose. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day for your second listen. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today, which is a first of its kind 24/7 sports network on YouTube. Go to Locked On Sports Today and subscribe to make sure you stay up to date. Now, I want to look at another section of this TSU coaching search. Congratulations to Cris Dishman. Of course, I wish him the best. I am formally taking my name out of the transfer portal. I never wanted to go anywhere. This was a move made out of anger and disgust for what the school was doing. But however, now that they found a compromise, I'm back. And Cris Dishman is here. And I think the funniest part about it is the compromise that they found. Because on one hand, you're looking at TSU's, I think this was approaching 60 days of a coaching search. It was heavily surrounded by Fred McNair and Andre Johnson. Now, I think that we should have started to have an idea that there was going to be some sort of compromise when Johnson pulled out. And I didn't think that it was going to be – I thought it was going to be a compromise because nobody could come to a decision. And – that's what I should say. Now when Andre pulled out, but no one could come to a decision. It had to be almost unanimous, I guess. Like, it wasn't going to be unanimously Andre Johnson. It wasn't going to be unanimously Fred McNair. Maybe it was going to be for a second when Johnson pulled out, but we see he probably pulled out because he knew what was next, and that was that Cris Dishman was going to get this job. Now, the funny thing to me is not the fact that it wasn't Johnson or McNair. That is funny. That makes me chuckle. But what's really hilarious is you've seen a ton of names get thrown around in the mix here. I've seen Hines Ward. I've seen Brett Maxey. I've seen Ed Reed by kind of, his own doing, granted, but still Ed Reed. I've seen Fred McNair. I've seen Andre Johnson. The one person I didn't see was Cris Dishman. I did not see this guy in any conversations until they said he was hired. I was caught so off guard by this decision. I didn't have too much of a reaction to it. I'm not really a predictive person. That's not me. I might be predictable if you know me. Ask some people who know me, but I'm not a predicting person. I'm not predictive. I don't know if that's a word, but that's not what I like to do. So when I look at head coaches who get a job, if I don't have anything concrete to go by, I'm not really going to get excited about the move. 9 times out of 10. Now, maybe, I've been campaigning for Ed Reed to have a job. So, if Ed Reed got a job, I'm sure I'd be excited because I think he's going to be a good coach without any real foundation behind it. But for the most part, coaching hires, if there's no strong foundation, I typically don't get excited about them. It's just like, okay, cool. We'll see how that transpires, But yeah, that's the funniest part, that basically you had so many people thrown out there, and then this is what happens. But he has NFL experience. And he also has a lot of coaching experience. So maybe that's the best of both worlds. Maybe that's long-standing NFL status plus coaching experience, which is what one side wanted versus what another side wanted. You get to marry the two. And I think one day I'll do a conversation, or I'll have a conversation on here about these guys who are former NFL players who just want to hop into the head coaching seat. I think we'll do that because Ed Reed is one of those guys. And this is us looking at what's going to happen with each one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys who have been thrown in the mix but didn't get the job. Fred McNair is the only one that's remotely interesting. I think that Ed Reed is just going to relax until next offseason, and we'll see if he continues to campaign for HBCU jobs. I think that a conversation needs to be had around that. I don't know when I'll have it, if I'll have it. It'll probably be within the next 2 weeks or so. Yeah, probably. I don't know. It might be this week. I haven't decided. This is kind of off the cuff, but I do know I want to look at it in some capacity. So yeah, Ed would probably just go back to chilling, go back to saying, hey, I want FAMU's job. That's probably what he'll do now. He'll probably say he wants FAMU's job. Then you look at Fred McNair. I'll go with him next because he's probably the most complex, and the other three are just, or the other four are just interesting. You look at McNair. I want to see if he's actually coaching next year. These other guys, I know what they're gonna be doing. But when it comes to McNair, he could take a year off and say, you know what, I'm just gonna sit back and I'm gonna watch for a year. I've been a head coach. I wasn't fired. I could probably be a head coach next year. The only danger in that is if you're not a head coach next year, then are you trying to see if I can get offensive coordinator positions, right? Like, do you just want to go ahead and continue working and just have a job kind of set up for yourself? I know he didn't really protect himself when he walked out of Alcorn. So maybe he decides to protect himself this year and goes to join the PV staff because that's been discussed a little bit. I don't know. This is going to be something that's very interesting to watch. What does Fred McNair do next? I understand that this is a bad situation. I wish that they didn't do him like this. He is complicit in this by, he took that risk. He jumped off that cliff. So you got to make sure that he owns responsibility. He knew it wasn't a done deal for sure, even if it should have pretty much been a done deal. I don't know. Let me take that back because I'm not in that room. Right. And no one could have expected that the Board of Regents would be like this. So when Granger offered him the job, he probably like, well, this is the job. I have it. So let me not point fingers at him. I'm wrong for that. But maybe he does decide to take that extra precaution this time, as opposed to just trusting in whether that's somebody else's words or trusting in patience. Next one you have is Andre Johnson. Andre Johnson is going to go back to being Andre Johnson and not trying to coach. That man has no interest in coaching for real. He doesn't. Even the fact that he's in this mix is so confusing because I know if he didn't get this job, he wasn't pressing to get any other one. That's the difference between him and Ed Reed. That man threw his hat in the race, and I almost don't know if he was for real. Like, I almost don't know if he was just like, yeah, I got to be a head coach, or I got to start coaching. Like, I don't think he has any urge to do this. I think he just wanted to do it at TSU for reasons I'm not a huge fan of. But 1 second. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, I don't think Andre Johnson is going to be doing anything. Hines Ward, Brett Maxey, both of those guys are going to continue to move up the ranks of wherever they're going to be, right? Like that's what they're going to do. They are coaches. They are working up the ranks as we speak to be something. They're going to continue to do that, whether that's a positional coach, whether that's a coordinator, whether that's a head coach on the, I don't know if, well, actually, I think Hines Ward was already out of the mix before this merger anyway. But that's another thing we got to look at. Oh, man, we got some things to look at. Anywho, that's what I think they're going to be doing. Brett Maxey, Hines Ward, they're going to go back to working their way up. They're going to continue coaching because they are coaches. Andre Johnson is going to go back to his couch and just watch TV. He's going to be flipping through ESPN. He probably doesn't care because I don't think he took this overly serious in the first place. And then Ed Reed is probably going to continue looking for something. He's the most confusing guy because he's coached before. I've wrapped my head around the idea that he just wants to be an HBCU head coach. Why? Maybe I'll get into it another time. I'm getting a lot more skeptical about it, a lot less optimistic about it, but that's where I'm standing on it. And then you look at Ed Reed or Andre Johnson. Oh, I got them all. Ed Reed, that's what he's going to do. He's going to continue coaching. Andre Johnson is going to continue sitting on his couch. Or excuse me, I keep messing this up. Ed Reed is going to continue campaigning for a job. Andre Johnson is just going to go disappear unless you're studying the Texans and looking at that. Maybe he'll be around Miami. And then you look at Ward and Maxey, who are just going to fade off and just continue working up the ranks, how they've been doing. And nobody's going to pay them any mind from this area, right? The people who are going to pay them mind is is what staff that they're on. But as we move forward, I have a staff decision. Don Thornton decided to sit down her star player for pretty much the entire second half against TSU. And that's one that has me scratching my head, but also one that I know is one of my biggest takeaways from this TSU UAPB women's basketball game. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Now, Jase, I like to call it the just in case because the Jase case is going to provide you with 5 antibiotics that are designed to treat over 50 infections. And the reason I say just in case is because you never know what's going to happen. And because they're designed to treat over 50 infections, you're prepared for so many different things. You're prepared for, I'm not going to go list them off, but you're ready for A, you're ready for D, you're ready for L, you're ready for M. Like, you're ready for those things because you have the Jase case and everything is stocked up. So go to Jase Medical, that's JASE medical.com, and use the code locked on. With the code locked on, you get $20 off your first purchase. Be prepared for any and everything. You never know what's going to happen. So have your just in case case, or better called the Jase case. All you have to do is go to JASE medical.com. That's jasemedical.com, and use the code locked on. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. I have my 2 biggest takeaways from this TSU versus UAPB women's basketball game. And for me, the biggest one was the decision to sit down Zaay Green. And this one was interesting to me because watching it live, I didn't see anything about her being injured. I saw her on the sideline standing up, cheering on her teammates. So she seemed engaged. She didn't seem dejected. She didn't seem to be injured. I didn't hear anything about an injury. And if I did happen to miss it, then, I mean, hey, I got a second takeaway. But I didn't see anything be said about a Zaay Green injury. Now, that's where everything gets confusing, because you may want to hear that she was sat down and look at her stat line. Don't worry, I'll indulge you with that information myself. Green shot 1 for 10 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3, and had no free throw attempts. So she shot 10 shots, made 1, 2 points. You won't see another game like that from her. I promise you that. It's very doubtful that you see that. Now, I also don't care. That's the thing. I don't care that she shot 1 for 10. I don't care that she shot 0 for 1 from 3. I don't care that she hadn't been able to get to the line. There's 2 important stats, 14 and 4. 14 is the number of minutes that she's played. She's never played less than 30 all year long. 4 are the number of fouls that she had. So I understand when she was sat down with basically 9 minutes to go in the third quarter, but I expected her to come back. That's the thing, is I'm okay with the decision to sit her down when you sat her down. But in the last 3 minutes of the game, we're playing a free throw game. Guys are going to, or the girls are going to shoot free throws. That's how close that this game is. It was a 5-point game at the end of the night. I would have put Green back in. I'm putting my star back in. I understand she hasn't shot well. I understand that she hasn't got to the free throw line. I understand that she's in foul trouble. But it doesn't matter to me. My star player is my star player. I don't know if this was a decision, because you did get a technical prior to that. Green did. I don't know if this was the decision to be kind of, discipline of, you got to understand nobody's bigger than the game, so we got to have you sit down. I don't know. But what I do know is that this was a close game. Even if you didn't feel like you were going to need her, it was clear you were going to at the end of the game. At the worst, put her in there, because they're accounting for her. I don't care how bad she shoots. I don't care how bad of an off night you have. When you're a potential SWAC player of the year, they're keying in on you anytime you're on the floor. At worst, that probably should have opened up something for someone else. I just wasn't sure about this. This was confusing to me. I mean, I'm gonna let her go. I'm gonna let her go 1 for 15. I'm gonna give her the opportunity to go 1 for 18. I'm going to give her that opportunity. I don't know. Maybe I'm just different in my philosophy, and I understand she's had a bad day. She had a bad day, but that's just not enough for me. I'm bringing my best player out at the critical moment. That's just my point of view on it. The second thing is women's basketball or Texas Southern women's basketball a threat? Because I feel like UAPB women's basketball is a threat, and I want to give that praise to TSU. The only thing that has me hesitant is Zaay Green didn't play. Like, that's the part that's difficult, is that you beat UAPB, and that's a good win. Huge upset, and it should be acknowledged. But at the same time, they didn't have their star player in at the crucial time. So it's almost like now I have eyes on TSU, but I don't know if I'm ready to label them anything. But they played well. You saw them. It was a good game. Like, there was no doubt it was a good game. It was fun to watch. It's just missing the star player has me a little bit sour. Like, imagine you knocked off. Everybody got two players now that's just stars in the NBA, so I couldn't think of anything. But imagine you knocked off the Lakers back in the day without Kobe. Like, okay, no disrespect to Powell. No disrespect to Powell. But I don't know if that's a sign of you being ready to take that next step. That's kind of like how I view what TSU did. So it's up in the air. It's something to watch. That's a takeaway and a half. It's a takeaway and something I need to watch. The future of TSU women's basketball, because best believe I want them to be good. You know this. I'm officially out of the transfer portal, so we here and we cooking now. But I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. We're not done with this coach talk. This coach talk might be going on for another week and a half. Honestly, it depends on when FAMU gets their stuff together. And right now, Cozy just said that he expects to be the head coach, or he's still optimistic, something of the sort. But I'll have if you want to get the exact quote, I'll have that for you tomorrow on tomorrow's episode of Locked On HBCU, as we look at where he believes that he stands in the FAMU head coaching race. Now, in the meantime, between time, if you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.